Most wonderful time of the year. It's almost a religious experience for some of us when the Masters rolls around.
43 of the 88 participants in this year's Masters were not born in 1994. Half the field has never known a Masters without Tiger or Phil. Ricky, as far as I can see, one of the more wide open majors, or Masters rather, we've had in a long time. It feels like there's 15 to 20 guys in this year's field that have a legitimate shot.
My guest today has been one of my favorite voices in sports for a long time now, although his youthful appearance belies it. He is the host of Trey Wingo Presents, as well as Golf Live with Trey Wingo on YouTube. Tony Finau on the latest episode. I'm going to have to check that out. I encourage you to do so as well. My pleasure to welcome back to the program the great Trey Wingo. Trey, how are you?
Ricky, doing great, man. Always good to talk with you.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you back on. Most wonderful time of the year, Augusta. We are set to tee off tomorrow. And, it's almost a religious experience for some of us when the Masters rolls around and the azaleas are in bloom. But the first time since 1994 that the field has not had Phil Mickelson or Tiger Woods, at least one of the two, in it. And while we certainly hope and expect that we'll see both of those guys back next year, hopefully, it does feel like a bit of a milestone in the passage of the hands of time in golf. What do you make on it? Any time to reflect on maybe what they have meant to the game and to Augusta?
Well, sure. I mean, Phil's won 6 majors. Half of them were at Augusta. And they had that great run together. Phil won his first in 04. Tiger got it back in 05 with that incredible shot on 16, the greatest Nike commercial of all time. And then Phil won it again in 2006. Tiger burst onto the scene in his first professional major in 97, where he shot 40 on the front nine and then turned it around with a 30 on the back and went on to win by the largest margin in Masters history. So these two have been intertwined together. But you mentioned the passage of time, Ricky, and it's really interesting. Not only is it the first time, as you correctly pointed out, since 94 that neither Phil nor Tiger has been in the field, 43 of the 88 participants in this year's Masters were not born in 1994. So not only Phil and Tiger not being there, half the field has never known a Masters without Tiger or Phil. It's quite remarkable.
It's our modern version of Arnie and Jack, I suppose. So much has been said and written and, of course, talked about on social media about Tiger's situation. It appeared unlikely that he was going to play in this Masters even before the incident that occurred where he flipped over his car. At age 50, I think there were some of us that were hoping, certainly myself included, that we'd get him out on the Champions Tour a bit, where immediately he would probably make that tour more relevant than it's been since the 1990s. And yet here we are where, golf really doesn't even seem to be the story with Tiger anymore. At age 50, as someone like myself who has marveled at his exploits and has seen the ups and downs of his career play out since he was a teenager before our eyes, what are your thoughts on where Tiger Woods finds himself right now in April of 2026?
Well, on a couple of levels, there's a lot to discuss there. First of all, he finds himself in rehab. And quite frankly, that's where he should be. First and foremost, Tiger has a problem that he needs to address, be held accountable for, and hopefully can overcome. People get really angry for a lot of things you say about Tiger Woods. You can say he has an issue and he needs to be held accountable for it, and be empathetic. I'm empathetic to anybody who has an opioid addiction. It's a plague on this country that, quite frankly, has been forced upon us by Big Pharma. So I'm empathetic to anybody that has had those issues. But from a golf perspective, I can tell you that I've talked to a lot of PGA Tour players over the last few years that have said to me, if he would take a cart on the PGA Tour, he'd win 3 times a year. His game is not the issue. Ever since the 2021 rollover crash, which, again, another issue, Tiger drives too fast. Like, both of these car crashes were amplified by the fact that he was going well over the speed limit. That leg of his right leg is basically there with chicken wire and paper mache. It's not the swing or the short game or anything, that's problematic for Tiger. It's walking 18 holes 4+ hours a day, 4 days in a row. That's the issue. We had Nota Begay, his longtime friend and college roommate and teammate at Stanford. And, he was convinced that Tiger is going, at that point, we had him on in October, I think, that Tiger is going to come back at some point and play on the senior tour. And I think that would be a great boon for that tour. And it would be a chance for him to get more competitive with the ability to take a cart. He just refuses to take it on the PGA Tour. But all of that is now on the back burner until we can get Tiger's issues in front of him and resolved. I mean, he's still, even though he's not playing, the TGL is there because of Tiger. All these young kids wanted to play with Tiger. He's the head of the competition committee because everyone respects what Tiger has to say when it comes to golf. First and foremost, Tiger's got to get those demons under control, and then everything else will fall in its proper place.
Well said. And I certainly hope, as I think we all do, that we see him back at Augusta next year healthy and in a much better place in his life. Trey, Rory McIlroy returns this year as a guy who got the 800-pound gorilla off his back last year. One of the most memorable majors that we've ever seen, Augusta or otherwise. He exercised the demon that consumed Greg Norman, and I suppose probably continues to until this day to some extent, capping off the career Grand Slam in his 11th attempt to do so, his first major at all in those 11 years. As we look at Rory coming back to enjoy this one, probably playing loose and free, what do you think of his chances of repeating? And how many more majors do you think that the Irishman has in him?
It's interesting, Ricky, right? Because a lot of people said after he won Augusta, he'd be freed up because, the scars since winning the 2014 PGA Championship when it was the last major, back in August at that time, there have been a lot of them, whether it was the 2024 U.S. Open at Pinehurst, the 2023 U.S. Open at LA Country Club, the 2022 Open Championship at the Old Course, where he had the lead going into Sunday, didn't three-putt, didn't make a single bogey, and somehow lost. I mean, it had been a long time. And a lot of people thought last year, well, he's got this thing off his back now, he's freed up. I think the emotional drain really took him the rest of the year. I think if he's going to claim multiple majors, it starts now having had a full reset and going back to that place. This is, Ricky, as far as I can see, one of the more wide open majors, or Masters rather, we've had in a long time. We had the dominance of Scottie Scheffler. Jon Rahm was the number one player in the world when he won in 2023. The Rory story from last year. It feels like there's 15 to 20 guys in this year's field that have a legitimate shot at winning this, and Rory's certainly one of them. But if you look at the numbers, and if you don't mind, I've got some interesting statistics here from my friend Justin Ray. If you love golf, follow him at Justin Ray Golf on Twitter and Instagram. He does the Golf Live show with me every Tuesday, 4 o'clock Eastern. Just put this in your mind as you're watching the Masters over the next 4 rounds. The last 20 Masters champions have made either eagle or birdie 55% of the time on par fives. So number one, you got to take advantage of the par fives. That's why Bryson DeChambeau has always said, it felt like a 68 to me instead of a 72, and that came back to bite him in the butt. Augusta said, I don't think so. Hold on. Here's another one. Your average start before getting your first victory at Augusta, 6.5 years, because it's the only course you play every year at a major. We have a rotation, anchor courses at the U.S. Open, courses in the Rota, as they call it, for the Open Championship. Masters is the only major that you play every year. So you better have intimate knowledge of how this course plays and what the layout is. And these last two, I think, are really interesting. The last 5 Masters winners have scrambled at a rate of 71% or better. And scrambling means you miss a green, you miss a fairway, you still find a way to make a par or better, all right? So when you find yourself in trouble, you got to get yourself out of it. And this, I think, is the most telling thing. The last 6 of the last 7 Masters winners ranked in the top 6 in strokes gained on approach, which means you better hit the right spots on these greens, because you could hit the green at Augusta and still 4-putt. I mean, they're devilish. You have to put the ball in the right spot on the green to give yourself an opportunity. So you have to have experience. You have to have the ability to take advantage of the par fives, and you absolutely have to be able to put the ball on the green in the right location. If you don't do that, you don't have a shot this week.
6 of the last 11 winners, it was their first major championship. And, of course, we always look at the guys. We're looking at Scottie and Rory and Jon Rahm and Bryson and the usual suspects. But when you look around at potential dark horses, Trey, are there any names that come to mind for you as somebody who might be able to break through and get their first major championship this week at Augusta?
Well, I can think of 2 right away, or 1 right away that hasn't won a major. We talked about this being a great approach golf course, right? As my friend Justin Ray calls it, it's the second shottiest of all second shot courses on tour. In other words, again, put the ball in the right place on the green at the right time. There's only one player in the PGA Tour scoring right now who is in the top 25 in scoring on par 3s, par 4s, and par 5s. And that's Russell Henley. Russell Henley went to the University of Georgia. He's been a Ryder Cupper. He understands pressure. He's been around for a while now. If you're looking for a dark horse who's never won a major, I would suggest Russell Henley based on the fact that he can score well on all 3 types of holes that you're going to need to score on. Now, there's a couple other guys that might be considered slightly more dark horse, but they have won majors before. We talked about strokes gained on approach. Well, Matt Fitzpatrick, who almost won the Players' Championship, who has won the 2022 U.S. Open, and then won a couple of weeks later at the Valspar, is 7th on tour this year in strokes gained approach. And his game is dialed in right now, and I think he's a guy that you really want to take a look at. And then there's another guy. Again, he has won a major, but it's been a while, and that's Justin Rose. You know, Justin Rose, his record at the Masters without winning is remarkable. Now, to put that in some sort of perspective, if you look at the top 10 career earnings winners at the Masters, and I understand it's skewed because of the current money situation, so guys like Jack will have no chance of being on that list. But in this era of all the big money, Justin Rose, having never won a Masters, is in the top 10 all-time earnings by playing at Augusta. You know, obviously Phil is number 1, Tiger's number 2, Patrick Reed is on there, Jordan Spieth is on there. But Justin Rose, who has never won, is in the top 10. He's 8th overall in career earnings at the PGA Tour. He made 10 birdies last year on Sunday to force that playoff with Rory and didn't win. His record at Augusta is remarkable. He's already won earlier this year out of Torrey Pines. So those would be the guys that I would look at outside the usual suspects. But if you're looking for a non-major winner, Russell Henley would certainly be a guy I would keep my eye on.
Russell Henley. I think I'm going to throw a few bucks on Russell Henley.
That
was compelling. That was compelling. What you say? He seems
we like to work with data,
one.
Ricky. We like to work with data.
Yes. I appreciate it when folks come armed with data, not just what their gut tells them. Trey, so much of golf, we're consumed as a hardcore golf fan, greatness, right? And looking at the resume, and it always comes down to the majors. Yes, there are other tournaments that are significant. There are other tournaments that matter to the players. But it really does come down to the 4 majors. And Scottie Scheffler, a couple of months shy of his 30th birthday, finds himself in rarefied air, 20 PGA Tour victories, and that has come in a span of 4 years and 2 months. 4 majors, including 2 green jackets in that time, a couple of Players' Championships, a gold medal, the whole thing. And just this one arrest, just this unassuming family man, seems like one of the most grounded guys. Only Jack, Tiger, and Scottie have 20 tour wins and 4 majors prior to their 30th birthday. As we look ahead, can Scottie Scheffler? I think Scottie could approach 10. I wouldn't be shocked if Scottie got to double figures. And I know that's saying a lot because there's no guarantee he's ever going to win another major. You understand the game as I do. What kind of a chance do you give Scottie of climbing the ladder over the next decade? And maybe 10 years from now, we're talking about Tiger, Jack, and Scottie potentially as the 3 greatest, at least, of the modern era.
Well, it's really interesting, right? Because Scottie is on a totally different arc than Tiger. For example, Tiger had 17 worldwide wins by the age of 23. That's ridiculous. You know what I mean? It's absurd. As we were watching the Players Championship, and they were talking about this young player, Ludwig Oberg, and what a great young player he is at 26. Justin, my co-host on Golf Live, Tuesdays at 4:00, texted me and said, "Yeah, remember when Tiger completed the career Grand Slam at 24?" So I mean, Tiger was so unique in his start, and then he had, through injuries and some own personal failings, stumbling blocks that kept him from what everyone thought would be 20 majors. Scottie's almost the exact opposite. He was 0 for 72, I think, in his first 70 or 72 starts on the PGA Tour before he broke through at the 2022 Waste Management Open, then won the Masters, and then went on this 3-year run that's been the closest thing to Tiger at his peak. Not as dominant as Tiger, but the closest thing to it, as we've seen since then. And the way you frame that question, I think, is accurate and really important. Tiger took off like a supernova, and then life got in the way. Scottie built life first, and golf came to him. And I think because of the guardrails that Scottie has around him, and things can always change, but it feels like he might be more set up for long-term success into his 30s and early 40s than maybe Tiger was, because of the way things are in his life around golf. He's got guardrails. He's got things that I think keep him grounded. He had that really interesting press conference before his win at the Open at Royal Portrush, where he's like, why do we think this is the most important thing in the world? And then 1 week later, okay, we got to go do something else and try and win. He's introspective. I think he tries to keep things in his proper perspective. He doesn't try and do things that he's not capable of, or try and think of things in a way that don't keep him grounded. Look, he's been amazing, and he's going to have to continue this dominance. And again, just to put an outlier to what Tiger is, for Scottie Scheffler to catch Tiger Woods for the total week's longest run of being number one in the world ever, Scottie has to maintain that status from right now through October of 2035 for him to catch Tiger Woods' record for the most weeks at number one in the world, which is redonkulous. But I do think, to your point, I think potentially he's more set up to win more in his 30s and early 40s than Tiger was, because of things around him that he considers sacred.
Yeah, he's a different breed of cat, Scottie Scheffler. I don't know. I think you summarized it very well there. He may be built for longevity. And if he is, and he can maintain this game for a while, who knows what kind of a resume he may build yet. Trey, Brooks Koepka returns to Augusta this year for the first time as a PGA Tour member since 2022, before he later that year was a defector to LIV. We don't hear a ton about LIV anymore. They finally got some official Golf World ranking points. They're playing 72 holes now. Bryson doesn't seem like he's particularly thrilled to be there.
Interested.
He's a free agent at the end of 2026. How are things standing right now in the PGA LIV world that we've been in for a while, that seems increasingly to be tilting in favor of the PGA Tour?
Yeah, that's a really interesting discussion, and I'll get to that in a second. But you mentioned Brooks, and just so people understand, you talked about majors being everything. Brooks Koepka is the living embodiment of that. He has 9 career PGA Tour victories. 5 of them are majors. He's the only guy I know with 5 majors who has more major wins than regular tour wins. So when you talk about being defined by big game hunting, that's Brooks Koepka. And it has shifted dramatically. When LIV started, they were exactly what they wanted to be, a completely disruptive force in the game of golf, throwing hundreds of millions of dollars at stars. What they didn't figure out, and by they, I mean LIV, is that if it didn't work, what was plan B? Because the whole point of LIV, if you understand anything about what's going on in the Saudi government is they wanted to use this to wedge themselves in to get a seat at the power table, much in the same way they've done it with English Premier League soccer or Formula One racing. Whether or not LIV was a success or not was almost irrelevant to the founders of LIV Golf, the PIF, the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia. They wanted to use that money to come to a deal so they could sit at the same table with the PGA Tour and the DP World Tour. And we had that brokered agreement, which I think was really all a charade and a ruse to stop legal fees from being racked up that the PGA Tour simply could not keep up with the unlimited funds of the PIF in Saudi Arabia. So when that didn't work and that fell apart, suddenly LIV finds themselves with, well, what do we do now? Because they've lost billions of dollars every year running this tour. It was never meant to be profitable. It was meant to be a disruptive force so they could sit at the same power table as the other big time players and tours in golf. That has fallen apart. So now what do you hear from LIV? Well, we're looking for investors. The Saudis are looking for money. I've never lived in a world where that was a possibility. And they changed it from 54 to 72 and all these things because they know they needed OWGR points, official world golf ranking points. And they got a kids meal version. Top 15 finishers at a LIV event get world golf points. And it's a much smaller pool in total than anything you get on the PGA Tour, the DP World Tour, the Asian Tour, any of these other professional tours around the world. LIV is at a crossroads. They're trying to buy off or sell off team parts. They've said they want to become profitable. That was never part of their plan. Profit was never their end game. So now they find themselves stuck. And it's been a really good year, actually, for LIV Golf. The Anthony Kim story was remarkable. Bryson has won twice. John Rahm has won on tour. But no one's watching. At the end of the day, they're not moving the needle. No one's denying that the top of the LIV Golf has really good golfers. It's the depth of the tour that's problematic. So when you see this, this guy named Richie Lee miss a birdie putt from 5 feet that would have tied him to a playoff to go with Bryson DeChambeau in Singapore, at the same time that Cameron Young and Matt Fitzpatrick and all these big name stars, Ludwig Oberg, are battling it out on the Players' Championship at TPC Sawgrass and Ponte Vedra, I almost felt bad for Bryson in that situation. He knows he's one of the top 5 players in the world. He knows where he should be. He took the money. John Rahm took the money, and now he's trying to say, I don't want to play these extra tour events to keep my DP Tour status. Dude, you basically burned a bridge on the tour that raised you and made you a fortune. Yeah, there's going to be some way you're going to have to pay some consequences to come back. It has clearly swung in favor of the PGA Tour, thanks to the Scottie Schefflers of the world, the Tommy Fleetwoods finally winning, Rory McIlroy completing the career Grand Slam, having interesting people. 2025, Ricky, I think to me was the most entertaining and competitive PGA Tour season in the post-Tiger Woods competitive era. The question is, how do they keep that going in 2026, 27, and 28? And you've got to keep feeding in young stars, right? You have to have a ladder system to not only keep the stars on top, but bring up the future generation. And I think that's the real challenge for new PGA Tour CEO Brian Rolap.
All right, Trey, before you get out of here, the Masters not the only pinnacle of competition this week. Over at Super 70 Sports, we've been doing something called the Spectacular Bracket of Randomness. 32 things that are generally considered good, Trey. We've come all the way down to our championship game. It is underway right now. Voting ends Wednesday night at Super 70s. Get over there and vote. You might still have a few hours if you haven't. And look at this, Trey. I want to get your analysis. It came down to Game 7s and the 1980 Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue. And the public thus far, 50-50, a nail biter. Can you help us process this and get to the correct winner, Trey?
Well, those are two certainly very strong candidates for very different reasons. I don't have a distinct recollection of the 1980 swimsuit issue, was that Christy Brinkley, Cheryl Teagues? Is that what we're talking about here?
Yeah, I believe so. There you go. Look at the crack production here on the Ricky Cobb show. There are some covers for you to get the
Stacey Williams on there. Is Elle
focus.
McPherson on there? Elle McPherson's on there, right?
Yes.
Yeah, upper right.
Strong. Stacey Williams. That's a good reference. That she deserved a cover. I can tell you that.
Yeah, Stacey Williams. She had one of the greatest lines ever. She had one of the greatest lines ever. She says, "Look, I'm a model that sells beer and tires. I know who my audience is." That's a strong candidate. I would have to say I gotta lean Game 7. I understand the importance of for a generation like ours of the swimsuit issue before the internet ruined it for everybody. I'm gonna have to stick with Game 7s on that, Ricky. Much to the chagrin, I think, of a lot of people voting
back then. Yeah. Well, I'm with you. I had to search my soul, believe me, because as an undateable teenager in Horse Cave, Kentucky, the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue was indispensable for me. But I have to go with Game 7 as well. All right, Trey, let our audience know where they can find you. I know you are churning out great content on the regular. Let the people know where they can keep up with Trey Wingo.
Sure, absolutely. We've got my 2 YouTube channels, Trey Wingo and Trey Wingo Golf. We just dropped our Masters preview on the Trey Wingo channel. Tomorrow, we'll be dropping our Tony Finau interview, or later today, our Tony Finau interview on Trey Wingo Golf. You can find the Straight Facts Homie podcast wherever you get your podcast, Apple, Amazon, Spotify, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's all going to live under an umbrella called the Wingo Network, which we're really excited about. We just signed with Excel Sports Management, and they're going to help us grow our product and get it out there to the right people. I have another project that's about to debut that I can't specifically say now for legal reasons, but as soon as we're done here, we're taping the pilot for that. And when that is out there, I'll also be able to share that with you as well. We've got a lot of really fun, exciting stuff going on, but our main focus is the Trey Wingo YouTube page and the Trey Wingo Golf YouTube page. We've got some travel trips coming up. We're going to be going overseas and creating a lot of content with guys playing golf over there. A lot of NFL stars are going to be joining me for that. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Great stuff. As always, I know it's quality. Everything you do is quality, sir. I'm surprised that you make time to slum it with us here, but we appreciate it. Always good to catch up with you, and thank you so much.
Ricky, anytime. Your account is one of the best, and it makes me chuckle every time I see it.
I appreciate you, brother. He is, in fact, the great Trey Wingo. Follow him on YouTube, Trey Wingo Presents, and Golf Live with Trey Wingo. Always a great time. Thank you so much, Trey.